Good morning. Welcome to the UK Match webinar on budgeting and financial reporting. Before we get started, can I do a quick sound test to make sure everyone's able to hear me? We have turned off microphones for everyone except the presenters. But if you can hear me, please could you type yes in the chat box. The chat box should be at the bottom of your screen. Okay, we seem to be getting yeses through. Great, then I'll start the presentation. My name is David Bales. I'm the head of the fiduciary risk team here at Mannion Daniels. Before we start, just a few domestics to note. Everyone's microphones are off, so if you have any messages for us or questions, then please type them in chat. We're recording this event and we'll disseminate the recording after we've completed it, so everyone will get a chance to listen to what's being said again. Please feel free to ask questions throughout or post whatever your thoughts are. And at the end of each section, as we go through the presentation, then I'll gather the questions together and go through them. And there will, as ever, be the opportunity to ask us any questions, both at the end and after the presentation is finished. So today we're discussing budget templates and the reporting process as part of Mannion Daniels' role as the new fund manager for UKAid Match. Now on this webinar, we've invited both new grant holders whose grants are starting in 2018 and what we call legacy grant holders, everyone who had a grant at the point that Mannion Daniels took over their role as fund manager. Most of the presentation applies to everyone, as we're trying to get both groups onto a single set of financial reporting. But everyone is starting off in a slightly different point. So there'll be some stages of this presentation which don't apply to certain groups. But I'll try and flag those clearly as we go. So mainly what we're going to be covering today are the budget template itself. I'll be walking through how that looks. Then for the legacy grant holders, the process of moving from your old DFID budgets onto the new revised budget template. And finally, this will apply to everyone, the process for financial reporting and for making claims under UKAid Match, as that's something that will have to change significantly now our DFID is no longer managing it directly. So to start us off on the budget template. As I say, this applies to both legacy grant holders and new grant holders. We're trying to get everyone on a single template. Before we look at the template itself, though, I'll just run through the principles of the reporting. So firstly, there is financial guidance available that sets out these principles in a bit more depth. The guidance is available on our website, and at the moment there's 3 parts to it: principles of reporting, budget classification, sorry, one moment. Okay. Principles of reporting, budget classification, and exchange rate guidance. These are all available on the UKAid Match website, and they've been adapted from the UKAid Direct versions, so there may be some further amendments soon. We had to adapt them relatively quickly to get into the new funding round for UKAid Match. On UKAid Match, all of the reporting is to be cash-based, so there's no accruals. So please, when you're completing your budgeting, consider the timing and the profile of spending accordingly. The reporting of transactions is intended to be at the project level, not the grant holder level. So if your grant is structured where you have a single grant holder dispersing funds to 1 or 2 partners who are implementing the project, what we're interested in is the spending of the grant holder together with the spending of the partners. We wouldn't expect the reporting to just be the disbursement of money from the grant holder to the implementing partners, as that wouldn't give us enough detail. Everyone is on 1st of April to 31st of March financial year, although that that's really only of relevance for the timing of the claims, which now come quarterly. There is what we call carryover between the years on UKAID Match. So you are free to move budgeted spending from one year to the next without the risk of losing it. As I say, there's a quarterly financial reporting process, and the financial reporting feeds directly into the claims and the payments. So whatever you tell us you spent and what you're forecasting, those are the amounts that we'll be reimbursing. So those two processes work together. And the reporting is through an Excel spreadsheet, which is going to be on a transaction-based level. So you tell us exactly what transactions have happened each quarter. And that spreadsheet is going to be saved on an online platform called Smile. So each quarter you'll be able to log into Smile and update that spreadsheet with 1 quarter's worth of transactions. So those are the principles of how it's going to work. Briefly, the features of the new budget and why it looks the way it's going to look. Firstly, we set out to simplify the presentation as far as possible. So previous UKAID Match budgets had multiple different worksheets, with each sheet representing a different project country. We've now consolidated those into a single sheet, and country is just separated out into a column within that sheet. The budget is to be used as the source data for the remainder of the spreadsheet. So as you report on your expenditure throughout the project, it's really important to make sure that the expenditure reporting keeps to the same project outputs and activities and the same budget line naming convention that you've used in the budget. When we look at the budget in a couple of minutes, you'll just see a single sheet. But as we go through the financial reporting process, then you'll see it's combined. So in the template we'll provide, there'll be the budget, there'll be quarterly financial reporting tabs, and there'll be a summary dashboard that show us where you are against your spending for the project as a whole. And as I say, it's going to be stored online on our Smile database. It will be viewable by the grant holder, by the fund manager, and by DFID. So we all have a shared view of exactly how much budget is remaining. And that should remove a lot of the small issues where, because we're all working off different systems, we never have exactly the same view of how much budget is remaining. And lastly, I should say this will allow us to carry out a portfolio analysis for DFID statistics. It allows us to break out the expenditure by country and carry out an organizational delivery chain mapping that goes across the whole portfolio rather than just being project by project. So I'm now going to take a look at the budget template itself. If you bear with me, because the best way for me to do that is to share my screen with you. So, okay, hopefully everyone can now see the Excel template. So this is how the budget template looks. Hopefully it's quite straightforward, and it should be quite familiar for everyone who's experienced with DFID grants. You'll note in the first column down the left-hand side, there's the familiar 5 budget headings: project activities, capital expenditure, staff costs, administration costs, M&E, and lesson learning. And that's consistent between everyone's budget at the moment, or everyone on UKAID Match's budget at the moment. In the second column, for the most part, this can be left as not applicable. So for monitoring and evaluation, admin costs, staff costs, and capital expenditure, all you need to do is keep that as not applicable. This column isn't used for that. For project activities, however, we're trying to get a bit more granularity, and we're trying to link up better between the budget and your technical outputs in your work plan and your log frame. So you'll see we're trying to group by output. We would expect there to be multiple budget lines for a single output. This is the intention anyway. We're very aware that everyone has designed their budgets on a slightly different system from this. So if complying with exactly what the intention here is would cause you too high a level of effort at this stage, then we're very happy to adopt something slightly different, whatever suits you best, just as long as it works for your budget in the meantime. And for the new grantees, we'll try and push more towards this output level recording. And in the third column, there's the budget line, and that should be a close match to what you have in your budgets right now. What may change, however, is because we're now moving from a state where country is split out into a separate Excel sheet. What you'll see in this case is budget lines have to multiply out depending on how many organizations are spending the money and what countries they're spending the money in. So previously you may have had a single budget line for an activity, and that single budget line covered multiple countries and covered multiple organizations. In future, if that's the case, then please multiply out the number of budget lines and split it up between the different organizations spending money and the different countries in which they're spending it. So for columns D and E, please make sure there's only one organization and one country per line to allow our aggregations to all happen. We wouldn't want to see more than one country in a single line. Moving on to the reporting side, not the reporting side, sorry, the numbers side of the template. You can see it's broken down by financial year. For each financial year, there's the 4 quarters, and for each of the 4 quarters, information is split out between the budget that's funded by DFID and those parts of the budget which are match funded or not DFID funded. And that's the same for all project years, so hopefully that's relatively straightforward. The final thing to note is at the end of the budget, there is a budget notes section where we'd like to see an explanation of each budget line. This can be relatively short, but has to provide some sort of description for what the spending is and why it's being spent in this case. And really the most important information I'd like to see included is something giving us detail on the unit costs, just so we know more than just a basic figure. We know exactly how much each unit is costing. Sorry if that box was blocking your screen. As I say, it's a relatively new technology to me. Right, that's the. Actually, no, I'll keep going for a moment. So I stop sharing that, and hopefully everyone can see. Okay, great. I think we're back onto the presentation now. So before stopping for questions, I'm going to go through one more section as it's very heavily related to the budget template. This section only relates to our legacy grant holders, those grant holders who currently have DFID template budgets. We are asking you to move from your existing budgets to the new budget template that I just talked you through. So there is practical action requested on the back of this webinar, and we have sent through guidance, I think, to all grantees or to all legacy grantees yesterday with the templates themselves and with a Word document giving a bit more detail as to how the move is to be made and the timetable for making the move. I'll talk through it now, and if you've got any questions, then please speak up. So the important points to run through. There's no change to the substance of budgets. There's going to be the same budget total for each project. We're just changing the presentation and hopefully simplifying it to a single sheet. As I've already covered, the budget's used as the source data for the remainder of the spreadsheet, so it's important to remember your reporting will be on the same basis as the budget you present. And this only applies to grants which end after the 31st of December 2018. So if your grant is ending over the next couple of months, please disregard any of this. You don't have to make the switch, as it wouldn't be worthwhile your time making the change. For everyone whose grant ends after the 31st of December 2018, then we're going to ask you to change your budget to the new template. However, if you dislike the different templates, you're most welcome to make the switch onto the new template. You just have to contact us about it, as we'll be leaving you alone on this point. And the first quarter for which this new template is going to apply is from Q3 2018, which is October to December. So before that point, we've got to get the new budgets agreed, and we have to make sure that the reporting is in place and everyone understands it, basically by the end of this current quarter. So this is the timetable for transition. Right now we're at the very start of the process. So you'll note we sent across the templates to all grant holders yesterday. And yeah, this is our way of talking it through and giving you some more information on the process. Throughout July, we'd like grant holders to work on completing their revisions to the budget template and come up with a new budget based on our template that I just went through. And by the 10th of August, we'd like you to submit that back to your normal point of contact in the UK Aid Match team. From the 10th of August to the end of September, we'll be reviewing these and agreeing the revised budgets with between ourselves and with you. I know there's going to be some back and forth on this point, as there's going to be budget revisions that have to be agreed as we go. And there's also some work that will need to be done internally as we embed the new budgets within the wider template to allow reporting to take place. As such, you'll see at the bottom of the slide I've said, please note we're doing a lot of these simultaneously, and there may be a few delays in communication as we go through the process. But hopefully by the end of this quarter, everyone will be able to report on the new basis. Please, so now you've got the templates and you've got the guidance, so please start work on this change as soon as you're able to make sure that everything goes through in a timely manner and there's no issues that come up. Or if there are, then there's plenty of time for us to resolve them with you. A few notes as we go through the revision to the template. Firstly, there's no change to the total budget itself. Those are staying fixed. Changes of allocation between your budget lines are allowed within normal flexibilities. So there's budget guidance online as to what that is, but basically it's 10% of the value of a budget subheading can be moved between any different budget line. I'd really recommend you read the guidance online about that, because it takes a little while to understand and to apply. But yes, if you have any questions about that, then let us know and we can talk it through with your PRMs. Changes outside of that normal flexibility will also be allowed under agreement. So we're expecting this in many cases to act as kind of a budget revision process, and we'll follow the normal budget revision process. So if you feel the need to reallocate expenditure between your budget lines significantly, then we're happy to use this process as a means of doing that. But it will follow our normal process for sign-off, and yeah, will be subject to be rejected under that normal process. I said the most complicated part of this is the periods for which it's to be completed. So for those periods that have already taken place and you've already completed reporting on, those periods should be marked as actuals, and the amounts recorded in your new budget should be the actual amount that you've expended. If that means that you're below your budget, then obviously going forward, you'll have to carry out a bit of a reallocation to make sure your total doesn't change. So we'd expect you to reapportion any unspent budget to the periods that haven't yet been completed, which will be your forecast periods. And lastly, as I say, we're trying to keep this process as light touch as possible. I know it inevitably requires some level of effort on your part, but please keep the original budget lines and fit to groups of outputs and activities as far as possible. We're obviously trying to make the move to output-based reporting, but that's not intended to generate a huge amount of work on your part right now. We're not hoping that you completely redo your budget as a result of this. We'd much prefer it if you just come up with common sense allocations of your existing budget lines between groups of activities or outputs. So yes, we do want everyone on the new template, but we'll do everything we can to minimize effort as far as possible. And thank you very much for your assistance in doing that. Right, this is the end of the section regarding the budget template itself. So I think it's an appropriate point for me to pause and see if there's been any questions. So I see there's been at least one. Can outputs be named as output 1, output 2, etc. to avoid too much text? They can, but we'd really prefer it if you gave us some kind of indication as to what the output was. I assume this is just a copy and paste from your log frame. So yeah, to allow us to read the budget as a standalone document, we'd much prefer it if you included the name of the output or a shortened version of it. I'll pause for a moment longer while we see if there's any more questions. How do we get access to Smile? So okay, so at this exact moment, you don't need access to Smile. We'll be agreeing the changes on the budget offline based on the Excel templates. We are arranging logins for all grant holders, and they will be sent relatively shortly, along with some guidance on exactly how to use Smile. So yes, it's not something you've missed. It's an action with us to complete. And that'll certainly be done well in advance of you needing to carry out the Smile-based reporting. Grant ends in January 2019. Do we have to move to the new template? Yes, please. We've set the deadline of the end of December 2018, so we'll try and stick to that. So yes, please can you make the shift along with the other grants? Flexibility for timeline to transition. Okay, apparently this question came because the contract hasn't yet been signed. So for new grantees that haven't signed their contracts, there shouldn't be any transition needed. I think all of the new grantees would have started off on this revised budget template already. So if you're a grant holder that's in the most recent funding round, starting 2018, you will already be on this budget template. It's the legacy grant holders that need to shift from their old DFID budget template onto this new version. Although if you're referring to, you will have obviously had a budget at concept note and application stage. If you mean the timeline to transition for that budget to the new template, then that'll follow your contracting timelines. Is this for UK Direct as well? Not explicitly. So the most recent UK Direct grant holders are all being based on this new template. And the legacy grant holders, I think that the shift won't be made as there isn't enough time left in their grants to as a portfolio to make the move across worthwhile. Yeah. Forecasting at subheading level or by line. So the forecasting is done quarterly alongside the financial reporting process. I'll take you through that in a minute, but just as a summary, forecasting is done on a financial year basis. So we ask you to forecast just for the remaining period in the financial year, and it's done at budget heading level. So we just ask for those five budget headings to be forecast. Guidance about flexibility can move between budget subheadings. So the current guidance is you can move 10% of the value of your budget subheading between the budget lines within that subheading. And that means there isn't automatic flexibility to move between the different budget subheadings. Now, obviously, we don't expect you to keep to exactly the same budget throughout, and we know it's really valuable to have the flexibility to move between the budget subheadings. So all it means is when you need to shift budget between the subheadings, then you have to come to the fund manager and complete a rebudgeting exercise. So that's the normal flexibility. As part of this process, as part of the process for moving between budget templates, you can do it as part of that as well, as this is kind of a large-scale rebudgeting exercise across the portfolio. Template says advance. Is there a arrears template? Yes, there is. There's separate advance and arrears templates. We've had to separate them out because of the formula in the templates working in a different way. But for the budget, that doesn't matter. Everyone gets the same budget. It's the reporting template that's different. So for now, for this budget transition period, you don't need to worry about whether you're an advance or arrears claimant. You just complete the same budget. Grant starts on the 6th of July. Is this another template to complete? So no, if your grant's starting on the 6th of July, then hopefully you'll already be in this budget template, and it should look familiar to you. As I say, all of the new grantees starting in 2018 started on this new template. Does every transaction needed to be at each individual line? So for the budget, no. So your budgets should be at the budget line level, which are basically activity-based. We'd recommend you grouping the transactions in a sensible, practical way for you, which gives us enough granularity to see what's going on, but doesn't make reporting a nightmare. So yes, we do expect transactions to be grouped together for the budget. For the reporting process, which I'll be going through in a minute, then we would ask to see all transactions on the same basis as your internal financial systems. But we'll come on to that in the next section when we go through reporting. Okay, we're getting on to a lot of questions about reporting, so I'm going to stop answering questions there and take you through the next section, and hopefully that'll provide some of the answers. But if you feel there's anything I haven't answered yet, then please feel free. There'll be another opportunity for questions at the end. Right, so the next section I want to take everyone through is financial reporting and claims. This section applies to everyone. Everyone's going to be on the same basis, and it's something that hasn't really been rolled out to the new grantees yet either. So hopefully this will provide a lot of information for you. Once the budget is set up, then all reporting is against that budget, and all disbursement has to be based upon that. There's some big changes being made to the process here, as previously the fund manager has been DFID, and they've been able to get in claims from grant holders and then make a payment to the individual grant holder based on that claim, because they're just asking for a disbursement from their finance team. Because we're not DFID ourselves, we're the fund manager, we can't keep going back and forth on individual transactions like that. So everything gets grouped together on a monthly basis, effectively, and sent off to DFID, and we request a group of disbursements at the same time. It's also worth noting that as part of our handover from DFID to fund manager, they asked us to set some deadlines and to formalise the process, because a lot of claims had dragged on beyond what they saw as reasonable times. So hopefully this will provide a lot more clarity to both you as grant holders and to DFID as to when to expect the cash to flow. I'm just going through the financial side, and at the end I'll hand over to Karen, who's going to do a quick presentation of the narrative and the technical reporting side. But on the financial side of things, here are the general points. There's going to be 2 claims windows per quarter. They will fall in month 1 and month 2 of each quarter. Any claims received after the deadline will be held and processed with the batch in the following month or the next available payment round. And we ask grant holders to make sure there is 1 claim for a 3-month period every quarter. This is the case even if funding isn't required. So if you underspent in the previous quarter and you have sufficient DFID funding to go on, so you're not asking for any more money, we still need to see the financial reporting. So please get into the routine of making sure there's 1 report per quarter. Regardless of whether the grant's in arrears or advance, all grants require some pre-funding, some funding from your own internal resources. Legacy grantees will all expect this, as it's probably the current system, but I'll take you through exactly how that works out in a minute. All reporting is at the transaction line level, and I'll show you our templates for doing that in a minute. And lastly, please don't wait until the deadline to submit claims. If possible, then prepare your claim as far in advance as possible and send it in to us, just to make sure we're not struggling to get everything to DFID by the deadline. So this is the timetable that we'll be working from now on. As I mentioned, there's 2 windows per quarter. There's 1 window in the first month of the quarter and 1 in the second month. And the first month, the deadline is the 19th of the month, and in the second, the 16th of each month. And there'll be payment 1 month following that, effectively. As I say, everyone should make 1 report per quarter, and everyone should expect to get a single payment in the same quarter as they're reporting. So it should normalize the reporting process and the cash flow process, that we can see money is going out in the quarter following the spend being made. Right now, that relationship is somewhat lost. So the next slide is something many more experienced grantees will be aware of, but it is important, so I'll dwell on it for a moment. It shows the patterns of claims and payments and how much internal funding is required for each payment modality. If you're an arrears claimant, you'll be carrying out work and making expenditures in month 1, 2, and 3. You make the claim in either month 4 or month 5, and you will subsequently get a payment in month 5 or month 6. As such, you'll be effectively pre-financing the grant by an amount of 4.5 to 5.5 months of the project expenditure. So if you're an arrears claimant, please be aware of that and that those amounts are needed. If you're an advance claimant, then the position is slightly different. You carry out your expenditures in month 1, 2, and 3. Your claim can only go in once you have the actual expenditures recorded from the previous quarter. So in this case, if you've spent money months 1, 2, and 3, you effectively claim in the middle of month 1 or on the 19th of month 1, and then payment will arrive midway through month 2. Or alternatively, you make the claim in month 2 and payment's made in month 3. So even for advance claimants, you would need between 1.5 months and 2.5 months of your own internal expenditure in order to gap fund that reporting period. I hope that's clear to everyone. So moving on to the process itself of financial reporting. As I say, one copy of the template is going to be saved on Smile. That's not just the budget, but that includes the quarterly reporting templates themselves and some sort of summary dashboard that I'll take you through in a minute. The templates can be viewed by the grant holder, the fund manager, and the donor all at once. So we'll have a shared view of how much budget is remaining and a shared view of what transactions have taken place in the grant. Each quarter, the grant holder is asked to complete a relevant tab on the template and notify their performance and risk manager here at Mannion Daniels, and the performance and risk manager will coordinate with the fiduciary risk team to say that the claim has been made, and we'll start the process of it. And lastly, the fund manager will process the claim based on the transactions listing provided. We will also save a copy remotely to make sure that if there's any changes to previous periods, then we know what the original version claimed was made. And now I'll pause briefly and go through the template itself. So once again, I'm going to have to share my screen. Sorry, one moment. Let's see if that works. Okay, hopefully like that. Okay, hopefully everyone can now see our template. You'll have all been sent this in the email that went out last night. This is the budget tab. We've already been through this. Once you've completed your budget, it will be embedded in a series of spreadsheets like this one. Just to go through the template itself. Up front, there's the grant information. We'll try and make sure this is completed, but it gives you the general information about your grant. The one part that we'll ask your help in completing is the methodology from converting local currency to GBP, and that should remain constant and fixed throughout the project. There's also the summary, which I'll come back to, the budget, which we've presented, and then there's these. These are the quarterly tabs. And for each quarter, we'd like you to complete the information in one of these tabs. So starting here, this is the current quarter. So if you're doing your reporting, for example, in June or August of this year, then you would go to quarter 2, 18-19. So yeah, the first thing for me to note is that the quarters being presented in these quarterly tabs are when you are completing the reporting. That's obviously slightly different from the quarter for which you're reporting. The transactions listed within it will be for the previous quarter. But yes, it's hard to make it exactly clear, but for everyone's information, the quarterly tab is the quarter currently in process. The information we ask you to complete, these first 3 boxes up here will auto-generate off the grant information tab, but we do ask you to complete your authorization name and contact email each quarter, just so we know who signed off on the spreadsheet. The second section is the forecast. This will drag through actuals information from previous quarters, but you will have to complete for yourselves the forecast for the quarter in process and the remaining quarters within the financial year. We ask for that to take place broken down by DFID spending and non-DFID spending. The main meat of the financial reporting is obviously for the previous quarter. We ask you to complete this template. The information in it, reference is just your own internal reference. You can enter whatever information in there you like. Budget heading is completed on a drop-down menu based on the 5 budget headings we have. Then, as what we've named activity name here, I think in other cases it's output name. So we'll make sure by the time we use the final version of these that that's all consistent. But yeah, activity name, output name, those are the two. Sorry, that column B there is supposed to link to column D there. Those are the two, the same thing. And the budget line information, which again should match the budget line within your agreed budget. Then there's the transaction description, which is free text, and you can describe the transaction however you like or however it appears in your finance system. As I say, everything has to be broken down between the organization of the spend and the country in which the funding is being spent. And you have to tell us the payment date for the transaction, amount in local currency, and the exchange rate. That means the amount in GBP will auto-calculate based on the formula. And then you tell us how much of that spending is allocated to DFID as a percentage, and that will calculate the final DFID amount. So as I say, what we're asking for is transaction by transaction expenditure in here. Please insert as many rows as you need. Our hope is that you'll do this based on your own internal finance systems. So if you just take a download into Excel from your finance systems and then reformat it to this template, then we'll have all the information we need. And hopefully it won't take too long to complete. Section 4 is for additional information. You don't actually have to add anything to this box. It's only if you need to explain something to us. So we've offered the example of large variances from the budget, but also if there's any transactions that are outside of the current quarter being reported, then it would be good to note to us why that's the case. The information in the agreed budget and the quarterly tabs will all pull through to this template, which gives your expenditure versus the forecast, your actual expenditure versus the forecast, under and overspend on a quarter basis, and the cumulative totals for both financial years and for the project as a whole. And that's all broken down between DFID and total expenditure, so including any match funding that you're providing. The work of embedding your budget within these new templates will be completed by us, but we'll make sure we send the revised versions onto you to allow you to complete your reporting and for verification that everything is accurate. Right. So that's all I intended to show on the templates. I'm just going to go back to the webinar itself. And onto the slides again. Yeah. Okay, I think everyone can see the slides. Right, finally, just a couple of very important points. These didn't fit anywhere else, so I've summed them up at the end here. Firstly, you'll be aware that your current DFID reporting requires a physical signature on a document. We're changing things slightly, so we now no longer need that physical signature, and the authorization is effectively by the SMILE login. So if someone has your SMILE login information, then we're assuming that they're authorized to do the reporting. So please make sure there's control over that, or sufficient control over that internally, because whatever is submitted, we will assume has been officially submitted by the organization. Secondly, forecasting. As you're all well aware, it's hugely important to DFID. It's very difficult because obviously you can shift your budgeted amounts between years, but DFID can't. So whatever budget they have unspent at the end of the financial year, they lose to the Treasury. So we really do ask your support in making sure forecasts are as accurate as possible. So that's the end of the presentation. That's all I intended to go through with you. Should I hand over? Okay, okay. So before handing over to Karen on the narrative reporting, I'll go through some of the questions that have come in. Are the reporting deadlines effective now? I.e., does spend from April to June need to be claimed reported by the 19th of July, August? So no, we're effectively treating this as a transitional quarter. If you can get your reports into us by those dates, then that would be great, but we won't be enforcing those deadlines. The only thing I'd note is that doesn't change our relationship with DFID. We still can't go back and forward on a single payment. So we will need to group payments together in order to make them, which means there may be slightly longer than average delays, especially if your report falls outside of those deadlines. How long will it take to receive claim disbursements? It should. So I'm not exactly sure what's being, oh gosh, shown right now. Sorry, we're having a little difficulty with the technology as I hand over. So if you look at the timetable section of the presentation, then it shows the view on Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and it shows that it takes slightly less than a month. So if you're reporting to us on the 19th of April, then the estimated payment date will be the 12th to the 15th of May. If you're reporting on the 16th of May, then it'll be 12th to 15th of June. So those are the amounts to disbursement, so slightly less than a month. I'll just pause as we get into some more questions. Sorry if no one's seeing the slides right now. We're doing the handover to Karen for the narrative and making sure we've got the new presentation on there, and that's taking a little while. But yeah, we will get it up in time for that bit. So there's a question about the level of detail. What level of detail should reporting be, or every transaction? So this is going to be on the reporting template we just went through. What we're asking for is transactions at the same level of detail as is in your own internal finance system. So we should be able to reconcile the finance system to the reporting that we're seeing in these templates. So for many people, that may be transaction. In some cases, you may have grouped them, but we'll accept whatever you're using internally. No. Okay, I think we've answered all of the questions. The only thing left for me to say is if there's anything else you think of, then please let us know, and we'll answer that as soon as possible. And yeah, all of your PRMs will be in touch with you about the process of moving between the different templates. For now, I'm going to hand over to Karen, who will give you some information on narrative reporting.
Hello, just checking that you can all hear me now. I think that's fine. For those that don't know me, my name is Karen Stevenson. I'm the Deputy Director of Mannion Daniels. Dave's done a great presentation outlining the financial process and the rebudgeting process, and included on that the the claims schedules. So what we're going to touch on here is just give you a very brief overview of what we expect from the narrative side to support the financial claims reporting. So hopefully you will have received this morning a copy of the new templates with some guidance as well. I'm just going to click on the quarterly narrative template. Hopefully you can all see that okay. Basically, much like the financial claims process, starting from October, DFID's Q3, we would expect all grant holders to submit a narrative quarterly report. Basically, we now need to be able to look at your narrative report at the same time as the financial claims process, to be able to assess your performance against your targets and see if that performance is in line with what you're claiming on your financial claim process. So we will ask you to submit that through Smile, and we're supplying the template here so you can see what it will look like beforehand. It'll be exactly the same as this on Smile, and you have to fill in each section. Each section is pretty straightforward. We ask at this stage, if you have got data that corresponds to that quarter, please put it in, but we appreciate that many of you may not at this stage have that. We hope that the new grant holders that have signed up recently and going forward should be able to capture that data from the start of the project, but appreciate it might be quite difficult for those ongoing legacy grants. So we suggest you do the best you can with the data you've got available, and we will be on hand to talk you through it if you need any support. So we're expecting all grant holders, apart from the ones whose project end between now and the end of September, to submit a narrative quarterly report, even if your project is ending. We'll be expecting this report to be submitted each quarter, and we'll come on to annual reports in a minute, but every single quarter of each year you will be expected to submit this quarterly report. In addition to the actual template, we ask you to also add in any significant comms activities, as you'll see towards the end of the form. But we will also ask you about your compliance with your due diligence recommendations and IATI, which can be seen in the last form there. So we need to track whether you are compliant, whether there are any issues with you becoming compliant, so that we can approve your claims and support your compliance. So there'll no longer be a specific 6-month, 18-month or 24-month review as DFID had done previously. This quarterly reporting mechanism will replace that previous process. Sorry, I should add in here as well, we would expect you to update and add in an updated risk matrix, which I will show you just shortly. Okay, so I think that's relatively straightforward on the narrative reports. I did want to stress, actually, a question came out of the grant holder reference group meeting, that is there a necessity for the PRMs to approve the narrative report before approving the financial claims process? No, we won't delay the financial claims process on the basis of waiting to read the narrative and to get back to you on our thoughts on it. The financial claims process will carry on moving through. The PRMs, if they have any concerns with any of the financial claims, will be able to look to the narrative to be able to better understand what the issues potentially are, and then be able to discuss with FRT. But it won't be dependent on signing off the narrative to approve the financial claims. It'll happen hopefully in tandem. So the PRMs will read through the quarterly narrative report and look at any actions you might have highlighted, and then discuss those actions and any issues you might have with you, hopefully within 10 days of receipt. This one will we'll have to play by ear and see if that works for everyone, you included. That's the aim at the moment. So I will just stop there on the quarterly narrative and see if anyone's got any questions before I move on to the annual review. Narrative reporting. Do I need to do the narrative reporting if the project ends before the end of December? And do we need to report on SMILE? That's a very good question. Yes, I would like you to do it before the end of December. You will, whether it's on SMILE or offline, we'll let you know. Just waiting for the other questions to come in. Are beneficiaries being reported only direct or indirect beneficiaries? Here you'll be reporting direct beneficiaries, please. Yep, primary beneficiaries, direct beneficiaries. Sarah's asking if you have some guidance on SMILE. Yes, what we'll do is when the system informs you that you're able to go in and start your reporting period, we'll ensure that beforehand we've given some guidance, hopefully it's some kind of video format, so it'll talk through how you enter and put the details into the SMILE system. Michelle's question has a question around beneficiary numbers. Sometimes you're not reaching new people each quarter, but continue reaching the same. How do we show this? In this quarterly report, Michelle, we want to know the numbers of new beneficiaries you're reaching that quarter. We don't need necessarily to know the numbers of the same beneficiaries, but eventually that will become apparent as it becomes a cumulative total. Cecilia is asking, if the project ended in March, but you're yet to report, should we adapt the new template? No. If your project has ended in March, you will be doing a project completion report, of which you should have an existing template. We're about to revise the project completion report to make it very similar to the annual review, but it's not yet finalized. So you can go ahead and use the one you have access to already, or you can wait for another week or so and have the revised PCR. Great. No other questions. I'm just going to move on to the annual review template. So on the annual review template, you'll see that it's quite significantly different from the previous template if you've done an annual review before. The reason for this is the annual review template was originally designed for DFID, for use on DFID managed programs, mainly bilateral country level programs. And we have found over the years of working with Aid Direct that it doesn't necessarily give us the information we need to be able to analyze your performance and work with you to make recommendations for the next year ahead. So we've adapted it more to be able to analyze your performance to date against your target and looking very closely at your plan and your approach as to whether you feel you're on track, off track, and what the issues might be, how we support you to address those issues. So we expect you to, much as you have been doing, submit an annual report on the anniversary date of you signing your accountable grant agreement. So if you signed your accountable grant agreement on the 1st of July 2017, we would expect you to be submitting your annual report on the 1st of July 2018. We appreciate that the year period is within that, so there's a slight leeway for you to be able to submit it after the end of the specific year date. But it does need to be aligned to the scheduled submission dates that Dave had shared on the DFID financial year quarter. I hope that's clear. The text in the template itself should be self-explanatory. In each section, there are some questions we'd like you to answer. There's a limited word count for a very good reason. Please focus on the questions, on the information that we need then to be able to analyse your performance. This template replaces all the previous templates. However, we appreciate that people are either in the middle of annual reviews now or just starting and have briefed project teams, implementing partners on the previous template. So we'll run both hand in hand for the time being, and you're very welcome to carry on with the existing template if you've started using it. If you haven't started using it and you are planning an annual review, we kindly ask that you move to this newer template. Okay. We also ask when you're submitting your annual review that you submit an up-to-date delivery risk chain mapping. You should all be aware of what this is, having done it previously. If you're a new grant holder, we can provide some guidance on what that covers. We also expect you to submit, again, a revised risk matrix, an update on your safeguarding position, how much progress you've made towards meeting the new enhanced standards by DFID, and as well as an update on your IRT status. The process is such that the performance and risk manager and or a technical advisor from one of our consortium partners will look at your annual review and your recommendations and will then work with you to agree a set of actions for the coming year. So I think what's really critical for you to think about when you're doing your annual reviews is use it as a tool through which you can assess your performance to date and consider areas for strengthening going forward and recommendations for actions for you to put in place for the next year. Okay, I'm going to stop it there because I think it's relatively straightforward and take any questions if you do have any. There's one question. Yes, if an annual report is due in October, does a quarterly report need to be submitted too? Yes, please. You will submit 4 quarterly reports each year and an annual report. Eventually, once you've been submitting the quarterly reports, I hope that will give you the information to draw down and feed into your annual review so that it doesn't feel like it's an extra burdensome reporting task on top of the quarterly reporting. You should hopefully be able to take the material from the quarterly report and put it into your annual review. What templates need to be used if you're in the final year of the project? If you're in the final year of the project, you need to do your quarterly narrative report and you need to use the PCR template. You can use, it depends when you want to start your PCR process. So you can use the current PCR template or you can wait for a week or so for the new PCR template. There's a question coming in on IRT. Does IRT need to be updated for the annual review? Yes, you need to update us in terms of where you are at sharing your data at the annual review stage. That's a good question from Michelle. Thank you. That you're about to submit an annual review at the end of July using the old template, which is fine. Do you then also need to submit the safeguarding and IRT compliance statements? Yes, please. Do also submit you absolutely must submit your updated safeguarding standards either with your annual review or as soon as possible, as per our email last week. Even if you submit them now and then have to do an annual review in 6 months' time, we will still expect a submission of an updated status on where you're at on safeguarding with your annual review. You will use these templates for the first time for the period covering October to December. Sorry, you will use the quarterly report, both financial and narrative, for the period from October, not for the period of October to December, but from the reporting period October. We've had a couple of questions recently about a template or guidance for end of project evaluations. We do have some guidance. It is currently under UKAID Direct. So we would just need to adapt it and share it with you under UKAID Match. But there is no specific set of TORs we expect you to use. But we will be adapting that guidance and sharing it with you. If you're coming to the end of the first quarter of your project, what will you need to submit for this quarter and in what format? Jamie, that's a very good question. We have no expectations from you that you need to submit this quarterly narrative report for this quarter. It starts from October. However, if you want to give it a go and try and start filling in that information, it would be a great idea, and it would be really useful for the PRMs to see that along with your financial claims process. Yes, clarifying the time frame for submission of the annual reports, anniversary of signing the accountable grant. You are able to submit the annual review up to 1 month after the end of the financial year. That gives you enough time to be able to consolidate the data. That is fine. However, the sooner you can submit it after the anniversary date, the better. Yes, there's a question around whether it means an amendment to your accountable grant arrangement due to a different reporting schedule. Indeed, what we will do with the PRMs is issue a one-page accountable grant arrangement amendment that outlines the new reporting schedule. But it won't be a full change to full accountable grant, it will be an amendment. PCR submissions need to be submitted 3 months after the project ends, or within 3 months of the project end. If possible, aligned to the quarterly schedule. But you are very welcome to submit a financial claim before that 3-month period if you want to submit a claim on a regular financial quarter schedule. If you have a new grant that starts in August, yes, so the grants that are starting that don't fit naturally into a different financial year quarter, you still have to meet the quarterly timings, but we appreciate that you wouldn't have a full quarter's worth of data. So you may, even if it's only a couple of weeks, so you may submit a very light touch report if you don't have a full quarter's worth of data. After that, you will then obviously be in line with the quarter, so it'll become more straightforward. So if you started in August, you do have to submit a quarterly narrative report in October, but we appreciate it'll be very light touch. Okay, I think that's all the questions now. I just want to share, sorry, I want to share the risk template too, if I can find it. This is the updated risk register. So we will share this up. We'll share this with you too if you haven't got it. There's increasing focus from DFID on managing risks and ensuring that we're capturing all project and fund level risks. So naturally, you've been used to updating us regularly on your risk matrix. We're going to have to look at that on a quarterly basis. And ask that you identify very specific risks and feed that back to us. There will be some guidance with this template. I don't think it comes across very well on that presentation, but there will be some guidance with it that will help you do that, and you can be supported by your PRMs and by the project team if you need further details. Okay, I think we're running out of time. Great. All right, I think we'll leave it there. But if you do have any questions, please email your PRM, who should be able to answer them. If not, they'll ask one of us to help answer. Hopefully, this should be a very smooth transition. It'll be relatively straightforward and help the whole reporting process. And we will let you know when we have some guidance on using Smile, and we'll send that out as soon as it's ready. Great. Thank you